Daily Tech News Show is made possible by you, the listener. Thanks to all of you, including Vince Power, Chris Beneteau, Steve Iadarola, and brand new patrons, Dorindas and Leah. Everybody welcome Dorindas and Leah.
Woo!
On this episode of DTNS, ChatGPT is not nearly as well known as you might think. Sarah tells us why the EV market ain't done yet. And Charlotte Henry is here to explain what the heck Netflix is up to after getting the NFL and saying, yeah, we don't want to be HBO anymore. This is the Daily Tech News for Tuesday, May 28th, 2024. In Los Angeles, I'm Tom Merritt.
And Studio Animal House, I'm Sarah Lane.
And I'm the show's producer, Roger Chang.
Joining us from the Addition newsletter, Charlotte Henry, welcome back.
Hello, hello. I hope you all had a lovely holiday weekend.
We did. Did you have a lovely holiday weekend?
I did. I had a very nice long weekend until right the last few hours when I managed to, playing football, bracket soccer, I managed to really do my wrist in.
But was it worth it? Did you win?
Yes, I think so.
Who needs a wrist?
Yeah.
It turns out me typing.
Wrists are replaceable, aren't they? Maybe soon? I don't know.
They're nice to have.
Is it stopping me talk to you?
Not at all.
No.
Yeah.
So we're fine.
There we go. That's all we need. All right, let's start with the quick hits.
On Tuesday, Google announced several AI-powered features for its Chromebook Plus laptops, including a system-wide writing assistant called Help Me Write, Magic Editor in Photos, Wallpaper Creator, and integration of the Gemini chatbot. The Gemini icon will now appear on the app shelf. New Chromebook Plus buyers also get a year of Google One AI Premium included. There's also 4 new Chromebook models, Plus models from HP and Asus and Acer.
The U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia has set the schedule for hearing ByteDance's case against the United States law that would require the company to divest itself of TikTok in the U.S. or face a ban on the distribution of its app. The law would require divestment by January 19th, so that's our deadline. All sides asked for an accelerated schedule, and here's the schedule they got. Legal briefs are due by June 20th from ByteDance. Then the defendant, the United States Department of Justice, gets till July 26th to do their briefs. Reply briefs, once you get to read everybody else's, are then due by August 15th, and that gives you time to start oral arguments in September, with the target date for a decision no later than December 6th. Now, given that December 6th is before January 19th, and even considering that the Supreme Court is probably going to be asked to review whatever decision is made, TikTok has decided not to ask for a preliminary injunction at this point. Maybe thinking that'll put a little pressure on things. I don't know.
Cha-ching for those lawyers.
No.
Well, speaking of pressure, the YouTube ad blocker war is continuing. Many ad blockers users are reporting that if YouTube detects an ad blocker that they might be using, it may skip to the end of videos or even mute the video altogether. This mostly seems to be affecting AdBlock Plus users. That's a well-known ad blocker, and several have already found workarounds.
New Atlas
one does.
New Atlas reports on a new metamaterial called the polymer-based microphotonic multifunction metamaterial, or PMMM. It can be used to let light through walls and roofs without heating things up on the inside or even letting you see. It's confusing because it's very transparent, but it also diffracts, so it looks frosted, so it lets light through, but doesn't let you see through, if that makes any sense. The film is etched with a pattern of pyramids that are 10 microns wide. It scatters 73% of the light that makes it look frosted, but is still 95% transparent, so the light eventually gets through, and that's actually more transparent than glass. Glass is only 91%. It provides passive cooling with radiative cooling and is super hydrophobic, so water just beads up and rolls right off, taking the dirt and dust with it. So they're self-cleaning windows as well.
Scientists from the University of Michigan worked with Apple to collect data from 160,000 willing participants to study tinnitus, aka the ringing that sometimes happens in your ears. Some people have this chronically. 77.7% of participants had experienced this at some point in their lives, and daily occurrence increased with age. Male participants increased tinnitus 2.7% more than females, but a higher percentage of males also said they had never experienced it at all. Noise trauma or exposure to excessively high noise levels were cited by 20.3% of participants as the cause, and that's the highest percentage of any single category.
Yeah. Another example of Apple trying to help research scientists.
Construction work, I can only imagine.
Musicians, concert goers.
Yeah.
AirPods in your ear. AirPods in your ears a lot.
Although Apple was pointing out that AirPods have volume limiting and noise cancellation, so they can actually help cut down on tinnitus.
And also Apple does, I'm just to overcome my quip, Apple does also obviously have lots of noise limiting features that it takes quite seriously.
Indeed. All right, let's talk about whether people actually know about AI. See, you all hear us talk about it all the time. You probably read about it on your own all the time. So you're out there going like, man, ChatGPT is everywhere, and everybody knows about ChatGPT. But the folks at the Reuters Institute teamed up with Oxford University to find out if that was true of the general populace. They surveyed 12,000 people in 6 countries across 4 continents about their habits with new AI tools like ChatGPT. Around 50% of those surveyed had heard about ChatGPT, and 20 to 30% had not heard of any of the most popular tools. About 28% of the people they surveyed said they had used tools like ChatGPT to create content like text or images or video or code, etc. 24% used them to get information. And I know what you're thinking, like, oh, great, they're getting a bunch of fake news. Only 5% of the people surveyed used them to get news. So it was information like, why do I have this bump on my wrist versus, what happened with the sports game yesterday. The survey found 7% of people in the U.S. used it every day, while that number was lower in other countries. So not a lot of people using this every day. In fact, Japan was the lowest country surveyed, with only 1% of the people they surveyed saying they use these kinds of tools at least once a day. 56% of the folks 18 to 24, though, said they have used ChatGPT at least once, and that's compared to 16% of those aged 55 and over. So it does seem like the younger folks in the survey were more likely to have used these or used them more frequently than the older folks in the survey. Charlotte, this just tracks as an early adopter manifestation to me. Like, yes, AI is taking over the mind share, but use-wise, it's like in a first-generation iPhone.
That's all true. The Reuters Institute, by the way, is a really interesting body. It's part of Oxford University, do really interesting works on tech and media and stuff. So I've sort of come across their work a few times, and they're very interesting people. I was surprised when you said it was as high as 7%, because I think, as you were basically just saying, Tom, those of us in tech who follow tech, who cover tech, kind of assume everyone is using these tools all the time. And actually, for most people, they're just these things they occasionally hear about on podcasts or in the news when people are freaking out about them. So I'm not surprised it's low. I don't know if there's name recognition data, because I suspect quite a few people recognize the name ChatGPT, for example. But yeah, I think it just shows what a long way we've got to go for mainstream adoption of these. My caveat to that, of course, is there are lots of instances where people are using AI and maybe not know they are. So, contact a chatbot through get customer service or something.
Sure. Yeah. Or AI overviews is coming to more people. So a lot more people will be exposed to it in Google than were before when you had to opt in to get it. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think it shows, as I say, I think it kind of shows that there is some kind of breakthrough, but equally, we're going to have to wait a long time for it to be this mainstream, all-encompassing thing. And a lot of the freakouts that we've seen over the last, 6 months, 16, are, not quite what we need to do yet, because, people are still not incorporating them into their day-to-day lives in the way people think they might be.
Well, and I think to your point, Charlotte, I think that's a big part of this is, you've got the younger set saying, I've used ChatGPT at least once. and older people
Sure.
saying, no, I never have. Well, the younger set is probably still in school in some capacity. Maybe you're not, but I mean, if you are, and you're trying to, find a tool to make you a better student, and or not have to work as hard, this is a great use case. Now, we talk about this on the show all the time. And, anybody who uses any of these large language models know that there are limitations, and sometimes, the hallucinations make things weird. You can't use this as your own brain. But I think younger people are more willing to say, like, well, but if I could, I'd like to try.
Well, let me poke around and find out what it is good for, right? Like, let me try it. Whereas as I've gotten older, I have less time in my day, maybe because I'm slower, maybe because I'm just getting less flexible to try things out. I just want to do the things that I know work. And I think that's true of a lot of people. I also know that of all the people I talk to, the people who tell me most excited that they use this the most often are people using it for code. It is very useful for code. I have a lot of people tell me that stuff's going to keep getting better and better and better. If it follows the pattern of most technology, it's about to reach the top of its bell curve. And that's when we'll start pounding away and figuring out what it's good for and what it's not. But right now we're still in that experimental phase, and the majority of the populace doesn't want the experimental phase, right? They don't want to be the first person with an iPhone that doesn't even have 3G or apps. They want to be the person with the iPhone 5 down the road where all the kinks have been worked out.
And also, most people don't need to be engaged with it in the experimental phase.
Yeah.
It's
not gonna
no
help them,
benefit.
right?
It's more trouble than it's worth. I just back to my point about people using AI without necessarily learning it, because when we talk about AI, we mean things like ChatGPT.
And that's what the survey was about, particularly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, some of the image generating tools.
The idea.
Gemini and some of the image generating
that
tools.
it's your assistant.
Correct. But there's also things, I would have answered no in this survey, but I use an AI tool every day because I have Grammarly installed to try and stop me making horrible spell check errors.
Sure. Yeah. And I think
at its core that is an AI tool.
Yeah. And probably most people will experience their use of AI in that way. Like it'll just show up in something they already use. Google Docs, Microsoft Office, Teams, whatever. Right. And Grammarly is a great example of that.
Yeah. And so my point is, just because they're answering no to this survey for reasons I think you pointed out, Tom, that doesn't mean they're not actually using AI in other ways that are useful to them and much more straightforward.
Yeah, it doesn't mean the generative models aren't useful. It just means it's not a customer choice per se. It's a feature coming into the stuff they use. Yeah.
And there are other tools within the sphere of AI that are useful already.
Yeah. Speaking of new tools and future-proofing against them, Tuesday, OpenAI announced it had created a new safety and security committee to oversee all the aspects of development of new models. The committee is made up of OpenAI board members Brett Taylor, Adam D'Angelo, Nicole Seligman, and board member and CEO Sam Altman. The group will spend 90 days evaluating OpenAI's processes and safeguards and update the board with its findings. A longer-term risk assessment group was recently disbanded at OpenAI. You may have heard about that after its two main leaders, Ilya Sutskever and Jan Leike, left OpenAI. So they've got a new, more near-term looking risk assessment team in place.
All right, so let's check in with electric vehicles, also known as EVs. You might have heard sales overall flat in the first quarter. Oh, nobody wants to buy an EV anymore. Big companies like Ford, GM did scale back expansion plans. Tesla laid off 10% of its global workforce, might lead you to think, oh, the EV market has really slowed. However, 6 of the 10 biggest EV makers in the US saw sales grow, 56% at Hyundai, Kia, and even 86% at Ford itself, just depending on the EV that it was selling. This points to consumers who want affordable pricing. They want good battery range, lots of charging options, all things that were hindrances to, potential EV owners in the past. Stephanie Valdez-Streety, who is the director and industry of industry insights at Cox Automotive, tells Bloomberg of the market right now, quote, we're still seeing growth in demand, just not the same pace for every brand. Right now, Tesla doesn't have new models. Ford doesn't have a lot in the pipeline. But Hyundai, BMW, Kia, Cadillac, they're really moving the needle forward. Okay, so overall, in the US, EV sales in the first quarter grew a respectable 23% year over year, matching pace with global EV sales for the same period. So, what is up with all the people saying, "Oh, nobody wants an EV anymore"? Charlotte, I know you're not in the US, but kind of looking at some global numbers here, what do you think is up?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, people do want electric vehicles. Second of all, governments want people to get involved in electric vehicles. But you were talking about the cars, and this brand doesn't have a new model, and so on and so forth. I haven't got my Cybertruck yet; it's still on order. I don't really know where it is, but
I would love to see it.
These things are not like an iPhone where you upgrade them the whole time, right? There's a point where the people who want an electric car have done their upgrade, and they're going to wait a few years for the next part of the cycle. So it doesn't necessarily surprise me that there's been sort of spikes and troughs in these sales. People have had difficult time financially. Probably the thing they don't need to invest in is a new vehicle. So the data you were laying off doesn't necessarily surprise me. I was saying to you off air, so I wasn't like, oh, isn't the big thing, I don't drive, but isn't the big thing for people thinking of making a move to electric, the infrastructure, the charging infrastructure. Now, I know there's been big moves in the US. I think probably there still needs to be more done here, although there is being progress in the UK on that. And that, to me, is surely the biggest barrier for people.
I mean, there was a time where if you weren't an owner of a Tesla, you couldn't use a supercharging station. That has changed. That has opened up a lot of, sort of cross country or just kind of longer road situations for a lot of EV drivers as well. There are, I think in the US, the news gets skewed a bit because to this day, I mean, it was sort of like Chevy, Tesla, maybe a little, you got the Ford, Lightning stuff. Like there wasn't a lot going on. So the fact that there are many other automakers in the market right now who are doing good stuff at an affordable price, you have more charging opportunities. Batteries are better than ever. The news tends to be like, oh, I think things are really bad. Look at Tesla. It's like, well, Tesla used to be the only name in the game, and now it's not.
Yeah. Tesla is by far the largest seller of EVs. So when they have a drop, that makes all the headlines. But let's repeat what Sarah said. Sales in the first quarter grew 23% year over year. So we're not talking about a slowdown. There isn't a slowdown in EV sales. There's an increase
slowdown with certain
in EVs.
manufacturers.
Yeah, it's that everyone's buying a Hyundai and an Ioniq, and that doesn't make for flashy headlines because it doesn't involve a controversial CEO or anything like that. But it's Tesla, the market leader, doesn't have a new model out. Their sales are slowing. That's really not that unusual for a market leader to hit a skid as everybody starts to get back into the game. It was interesting to see GM have a slowdown, but they have a bunch of models in the hopper and they're expected to have sales pick up. Ford is expected to slow down, but they had a really good Q1. This, to me, if you look at these graphs, looks like a competitive market.
It's certainly a competitive market. I was pleased you mentioned the quote unquote controversial CEO, because I slightly wonder if some of that is playing into it as well. We can read too much into these things, can't we? Those of us that spend
it's hard to tell if there's any actual sales impact of people's beliefs, or not.
Do people just want to not have the Elon Musk car? I wonder how much of an effect that's having.
But there's certainly plenty of people buying lots of other EVs, so that is true no matter what.
Tesla's competitors have got better as well.
Yeah,
we really have to remember that.
I also, not that everybody needs an SUV because, it's certainly
But they're popular. But that's what people buy, right?
They're popular. I have one. It would be hard for me to go back. But, when I was like in high school, like a Chevy Blazer was the coolest car I could ever imagine. Did I have one? Of course not. But the idea that there's like a Chevy Blazer EV in the pipeline, I mean,
Caught your eye, right? Yeah.
It did.
Yeah.
It really did. I mean, some of this is like, in a way, I feel like, I don't know, like nostalgic cars that are getting new
17-year-old
life.
Sarah
Yeah,
is
exactly.
buzzing.
Yeah. Not that they won't, be bought otherwise, but yeah, I'm into it. I'm also into a little show called Apple Vision Show. Have you heard of it?
I have.
Tom, Charlotte, you have. Maybe some of you out there have, or if you haven't, this is the show where Eileen Rivera and I host a weekly podcast to talk about what's going on with Apple, what we like, what we want. Is the company doing the things that we as consumers want? It's the Apple Vision Show. Get it? So we had a really, really fun conversation with Scott Johnson that was on our previous episode. It was really, really fun. We're also actually, for anybody who likes to join the live stream, we are recording our show right after today's GDI. So if you want to hang out between us and Android, between GDI and Android faithful, Apple Vision Show will be there. Get subscribed, applevisionshow.com.
It is time again for additional conversations on DTNS, where we talk to Charlotte Henry about some of the greatest things going on in the world of media and technology. New York Times interview over the weekend talked to Netflix co-CEO Ted Sarandos, who said he regrets saying that famous quote back in 2013 to GQ, "The goal is to become HBO faster than HBO can become us." It was a very snappy quote. People have been quoting it ever since. But Sarandos now says he wants Netflix to become the next CBS, the next BBC, saying that prestige elite programming is a, quote, very small business. He didn't say it was unimportant. He said it's just very small, and Netflix is bigger than that. Similar sentiment is expressed by Angela Watercutter in a Wired article called "Netflix Isn't About Flicks Anymore." Watercutter argues that movie catalogs and replacing cinemas aren't what Netflix and other streaming services are about. Instead, they are focused on becoming traditional TV networks. Kind of goes along with what Sarandos told the New York Times. Serialized shows, ad-supported tiers, live sports. She added that YouTube, the top streaming service per hours watched, is focusing on younger viewers with short-form content and their creators. Meanwhile, and Netflix just went and got the NFL at least a couple of games a year on Christmas Day. Charlotte, you watch the space really closely. What do you make of this?
I thought it was fascinating because, as you said, it's such a famous quote from Ted Sarandos, isn't it? That comment. So that was the first thing I thought. The second thing I thought was, well, Apple TV Plus is now the HBO of the streaming world.
No, that's very apt comparison.
That was my second thought. And my third thought was, yeah, they're definitely not doing live news. Too many complications, too much politics, it's too difficult. You and I, Tom, have discussed on both of our shows how reticent Netflix has been to get into live sports. And then it turned up with the NFL. But it's still kind of dipping its toe in, right? It's such a big commitment, live sports. It's so complicated. You so can't get it wrong if you're broadcasting live sport. I don't know if I've told the story on here about the time Amazon Prime Video, the first time it got Premier League football here. And it was fine. But there was a problem because there was delays. Your friends who you were WhatsApping during the game had seen stuff 30 seconds previously that you might not have. Live sport is complicated, and I'm not sure Netflix needs it to be as successful as it is. Maybe great dipping its toe in a bit to keep shareholders and whatever happy. But I think Netflix kind of is doing its thing and has always avoided live sport. Obviously, that we didn't really get mentioned earlier, but the WWE, Netflix has gone really big in on that, hasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is, I think, quite a clever way of doing it. I'm not a WWE fan, but it's a mix of live sport and entertainment that kind of works, I think, in the Netflix sphere.
Netflix always said, if we do live sports, we want to control it. We don't want to be paying a lot of money to these big organizations. And then they went and they got the NFL anyway. Again, like you say, it's limited. It's dipping a toe. It's just a couple of games, 3-year deal. WWE, Worldwide Wrestling Entertainment, feels more like what they were talking about, which is, we can work very closely with them. We can broadcast almost all of their content worldwide, even if we don't have all of it in every market. And so I was really shocked when they did the NFL, but it does go with Watercutter's theory of they're trying to be mainstream broadcast television, widely appealing sitcoms, things for all members of the family, live sports. And I know you alluded to Sarandos saying, yeah, we're not really going to get into breaking news, but they said we weren't going to do live sports with the NFL. They said they weren't going to do ads. They said they weren't going to do crackdowns on passwords. Frankly, when he said that, I was like, oh, they're doing news within the next 2 years is kind of what that means.
You are a very wise man. You have watched the internet for very many years. I'm going to have a bet with you live on this show that Netflix does not do live news. They've done live comedy, haven't they? They did topical comedy shows, and it got really difficult. Some territories don't.
But live comedy isn't, it's kind of cool. It was live and it works out, but that's not news.
Well, I'm thinking of daily shows, topical comedy. Uh-huh. It's complicated. I would be amazed if they bothered to spend the time doing live news. And as I'm saying it, I'm now imagining the nightly news with
everything you said is true.
Welcome back, Don Lemon.
Netflix could do it in a way nobody else can because they're in every market. No one else is in every market. They could have truly world news. But everything you says is true. It's too complicated. They shouldn't do it, which is what I said about live sports. It's what I said about doing ads. It's what I said about cracking down on passwords. So while I 100% agree with you, Charlotte, I will take that bet. Netflix will be doing breaking news by January 1st, 2026.
Right. I'm so excited for the first additional conversation segment of 2026 when we're discussing Netflix doing live news.
Our first gamble.
Whoa, things got spicy on DTNS.
We didn't say what we're betting, but that's fine. We'll worry about that later.
Doesn't matter. We'll discuss it off air.
Yeah, you could bet the air.
I mean, I have to say, we've sort of glibbed past it, but YouTube, no one thinks of it as a streaming service. And actually, I want to talk more about YouTube in GDI, but YouTube on the TV is for most people how they consume TV.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If you're talking about those streaming services, you have to have YouTube in there now.
Yeah.
Have to.
Oh, I mean, YouTube TV, which I pay for, is my
But that's
service.
a separate thing.
But that's not even YouTube itself.
I'm talking about the
which you can also use as a streaming service for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, let's check out the mailbag.
Let's do it. Churros and Palomitas wrote in about our latest Live With It episode. Last week, Rob Dunwood and I talked about his review of the Elgato teleprompter. For anybody who's, thinking about being a podcaster or, just, kind of wants cool stuff, it was a great conversation. Churro says, I bought a prompter from Elgato a few months ago, and for production, it's really a time saver. The software is the weakest part of an already strong offer, but has received a couple of updates and has improved since its release. Something I want to add, you can also use it with your Android device in combination with apps like Display Link Presenter, so it will mirror what's on your phone, the Nano teleprompter, his favorite prompter app for Android. That way, if you have to go and you don't want to take your laptop with you, then you have a lighter option for the road if needed.
Thank you, Dan, for a little extra content for what was a great episode. And patrons know because they got it in their feed on Monday.
Churros and Palomitas is Dan Campos.
Bill wrote in and said, I just listened to the portion of last week's show where you talked about the headphones that can filter out everything except for the person you're looking at. As someone with ADHD, this would be amazing to have in some situations where I could be easily distracted by anything and everything going on around me. I can't begin to explain the struggle many of us have trying to concentrate on just one person. person when there are 6 other conversations going on within earshot. Loud commotion, sirens, dogs barking, etc. Thank you, Bill. Good perspective on that technology advance. Hopefully they'll be able to get it into people's ears very soon.
Indeed. And both of these messages came to us through Patreon. But just a reminder, if you have feedback for us, feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com is where to send that email. I promise you, we will read it. Thank you to you, Charlotte Henry, for being with us today. Let folks know where they can keep up with your latest.
Oh, it's always such a pleasure hanging out with you guys. The best place to keep up with me is theedition.net. Also, if you're interested in the UK election, check out the House of Comments podcast, which I also co-host. But there'll be links to that also on theedition.net. And as well as taking out your DTNS Patreon, why not take out a paid subscription to the Edition newsletter as well? You can get all great stuff if you take out both.
Patrons, stick around for the extended show Good Day Internet, a virtual pet that comes with the ability for you to poke it with your finger through a hole in the side of the device, comes to the U.S. this summer. What could go wrong?
Yeah, okay. If there's ever a reason to tune into GDI, today's the day. Hey, just a reminder.
The time I've got to go.
We do record DTNS live Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 2000 UTC. Find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. Thanks for everybody who does keep up with us live. We're back again with Scott Johnson tomorrow. Talk to you then.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.